youth, I'm Jordan. We're continuing our series on Moses this week. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. In high school, my group of friends loved to prank each other. Our favorite thing to do was sneak into the other person's house when they weren't home and take pictures with all of their stuff just to show how clever we were. Problem was, I wasn't very good at it. My friend and I would be planning this elaborate prank. We were going to sneak in through the window, we were going to disable the alarm system, and all of a sudden, I would get a text. And guess what? My other friends beat me to it. They sent me a picture of them in my house, in my room, parkouring off of my stuff. Talk about failure. As Moses' story continues, we see that he has to overcome failure and learn some of the same lessons a second time. Well, the same is true for us. Sometimes God has to teach us the same thing over and over again until we really learn it. So the first thing we see in the story is that Moses faced failure again. So Moses comes from talking with God, and all of Israel is backing him up, and he's going to go to Pharaoh and ask him to free his people. The problem is, Pharaoh is the most powerful person in Egypt, and the Israelites are his slaves. But we see that Moses goes to Pharaoh, and he says,
"Let my people go."
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty much how it happened. But you see, what God was asking of Moses wasn't easy. In fact, most people probably thought he was crazy or that it was impossible. The same is true for us. Following God is usually easier said than done. It's easy to say, oh yeah, I'll love that person, but hard when it's inconvenient or even uncomfortable. Standing up for what is right is great when everyone else is doing it, but it's hard when it's the unpopular thing to do. But we see that even though it wasn't easy, Moses chose to follow God and he went to Pharaoh. All Israel was backing him up. But Pharaoh said no. But you know what? It gets even worse. The Israelites turn on Moses again. Moses asked Pharaoh to let the Israelites go into the desert so that they could worship God. Instead of agreeing, Pharaoh decided to double the Israelites' workload. Now, the Israelites were Pharaoh's slaves. That means they spent all day laboring for Pharaoh and building his kingdom and running his household. This type of punishment was devastating for them. But we see that they focused on their pain and their suffering instead of trying to see that Moses was saving them. He was trying to free them from Pharaoh, and they turned their backs on him. You see, following God is not always popular. In fact, doing what he wants can often be very unpopular, just like it was for Moses. Moses turns on God again. This was not the way it was supposed to happen. Pharaoh was supposed to free the Israelites and Moses was going to be the hero. But instead, Pharaoh doubles their work and everyone doesn't like Moses, and so Moses is angry and he's asking God why. Then Moses went back to the Lord and protested, "Why have you brought all this trouble on your own people, Lord? Why did you send me?" So as we see, Moses loses it just a little. He blames God for what happened. We shouldn't blame God because he had a bigger plan going on. But it's okay to be real with him. It's okay to tell him how you're really feeling and how that situation is affecting you. And we can do that without being disrespectful, just like Moses did. One last thing we see here is that God teaches Moses to trust him again. You see, we don't turn to God because he's just some power that controls our lives. We turn to him because he created us and he deeply cares about us. You see, all growing up, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. I know a lot of kids say that, but I worked for it. I practiced every day and I finally made a prestigious team that put me on track to the national team. Everything was going right. And right when it was, I suffered a devastating injury that took me out of sports. I was mad and I made sure God knew it. But you see, during that time, God responded. He showed me all these other areas in my life that I had ignored while I was pursuing soccer. Yeah, I wanted to stay mad at God and blame it all on him, but you see, he was trustworthy and he proved it to me. And the same is true for Moses. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. When he feels the force of my strong hand, he will let the people go. In fact, he will force them to leave his land. God showed Moses that he had a purpose for his life, that he meant it when he wanted to free his people from slavery. The same is true for you. He means it when he says you are cherished and that your life is important. If you turn to God when life stinks, he'll show you that he is worthy of your trust and that he wants to act in your life.